أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. Continuing with our discussions, we have been discussing the young son of Imam Husayn alayhi salam. The reason we mentioned that we don't say that he's an infant or a bit older son of Imam Husayn is because there's difference of opinion on the age of this boy. Okay, there are other differences of opinion which we have been mentioning. So that is why I've not been saying the name of the child. I have not been saying the age of the child. Okay, this is something that's why we have been using a generic term, which is the young son of Imam Husayn alayhi salam. Now, before we get into today's discussion, a brief recap of the areas of concentration which I focused on in the previous discussion. I said there's 6 to 7 areas where we need to keep in mind and the differences which will come in the narratives. Yeah. So one is that, was this a child? How old was this child? Was he a nursing baby, or was he a bit older than that? Was he even 7 years old? All these were discussed as we went through in the previous discussion, and we'll go through again today also. Then number two, his name. Okay, so so we have been saying Abdullah bin Hussein, Abdullah bin Razi. Okay, Abdullah Razi. These are the names which we've been seeing, but the names of Ali Asghar has come, Abu Bakr has come, Umar has come. All these names have come together to show that, are they the same people? Are they the same, referring to the same boy? Are they referring to a different boy? This is something we discussed in the previous discussion. Number three, where was this boy sitting when the arrow hit the boy? Okay, was he sitting on the lap of his father? Was he sitting on the horse when the father was on the horse? All what we discussed again. This is area number three. Area number four, who martyred him? Okay, so Hurmala or other names which have been mentioned. Number five, how was he martyred? Okay, so فَذَبَحَهُ we said, فَنَحَرَهُ we mentioned. All these we mentioned in the previous discussion. These are all areas which I'm emphasizing so that we can stick to these areas, so that we know that as we are continuing with the discussions, we'll see the discussions and the narrative evolving in all these areas. Area number 6 was that, okay, once the child was martyred, Imam takes the blood in his hand. Where does he throw it? Does he throw it on the ground? Does he throw it towards the sky? Does he throw it on the grave? Okay, as we go further, we'll see other narratives also coming on that. And number 7 was the whole narrative about Imam's dua also. Okay, that which dua did Imam do after the passing away of this child? Okay, and the 8th point is what happened to the child. So after the martyrdom, did Imam take him to the tent? Did Imam bury him? All these issues which we mentioned it in the previous narrative, in the previous discussion. Sorry. So today, inshallah, so as we mentioned that we discussed till the 5th century in the previous discussion. We stopped with Sheikh Mufid in 413 Hijrah. Today we continue with the 6th century now. Okay, so we stopped at the 5th century. We continue with the 6th century today, inshallah. We start with Khwarazmi in his Maqtal al-Husayn in 568 Hijrah. Okay, he gives a bit of a different context to what others gave the context as. Notice now, and then he gives also a theological twist to the whole narrative. See what he says. Okay, so Imam Husayn alayhi salam is all alone. فَلَمْ يَرَى أَحَدًا مِنَ الرِّجَالِ He couldn't see anybody from the people, okay, remaining from his side. So then he says that فَخَرَجَ عَلِيُّ بْنُ الْحُسَيْنِ Okay, this is something we didn't see earlier as a context to this child's martyrdom. That when Imam was alone, the fourth Imam alayhi salam came out now to fight. وهو أصغر من أخيه العلي القتيل. He was younger than Ali Akbar. وكان مريضا, and he was sick. وهو من نسل آل محمد عليهم السلام, and he was from the progeny of the آل Muhammad عليهم السلام. Now, فكان لا يقدر على حمل سيفه, he couldn't carry his sword. Okay, that's how sick he was. Now, when he was going, he took his sword, he wanted to go fight. وأم كلثوم تنادي خلفه. So Kulthum now was going behind him, sorry. Now notice, this is where the first time we see the name Kulthum coming up, and now you will see her role even becoming more prevalent. So Kulthum is going behind the fourth Imam and calling him that come back, okay, and he insists that he wants to go fight. And this is where Imam Husayn alayhi salam turns back to Kulthum and says, خُذِيهِ وَرَدِّيهِ. Okay, take him and bring him back. Why لا تبقى الأرض خالية من نسل آل Muhammad? This is the theological twist I was talking about. That the earth should not remain without the progeny of Ali Muhammad alayhi salam. So there must be somebody from the progeny who should be there on the earth. All these narratives, we don't see it earlier. Okay, so after this, then Imam, once the fourth Imam goes back, Imam then is all alone. This is where he shouts out for help. Yeah, that istighatha which he does, that who will help us, who will come, and hal min dhabbin yadhubbu an harami rasulillah, and the statements continue. Yeah, who will help us and who will protect us. After that, Kharazmi says, and now this is again something we didn't see earlier, that فَارْتَفَعَتْ أَصْوَاتُ النِّسَاءِ بِالْعَوِيلِ. The ladies started weeping and crying out once Imam made this statement. Okay, so once Imam heard this statement, فَتَقَدَّمَ إِلَى بَابِ الْخَيْمَةِ, Imam went towards the tents. And then he told them, نَاوِلُونِي, this is something, we saw this, that give me the child so that I can bid farewell to the child. Okay, so until here, the narrative then is the same. Okay, now after the child is martyred, the Imam comes down from his horse and then digs a grave for the child, which is something we saw again earlier also. But there's a statement now, is this a scribal error or this is something which Kharazmi meant? I'm reading what he has written, but there might be a scribal error here also. وَزَمَلَهُ بِدَمِهِ. Okay, Zamil is a companion, is a friend. Okay, so in the earlier narratives we saw that when Imam came and dug the grave, he took the blood of the child and threw it on the grave. Here he says no, وَزَمَلَهُ بِدَمِهِ. He put him, he accompanied his blood with him basically. So when he buried him with his blood. This is something we don't see earlier. Okay, and then later again وَصَلَّى عَلَيْهِ, which we discussed in the previous discussion. Okay, this was Kharazmi in 568 Hijrah. Come to Abu Mikhnaf. This is the false and the forged Abu Mikhnaf now. So researchers are having difference of opinion as to when did this book come up. Okay, when did it first appear? So some researchers, when they come up and say that when did this book come up, they say that, for example, Sheikh Mohsen Ranjbar, he's somebody who has worked a lot on these maqatils and Ashura literature. He believes that this book came up in 6th century. Okay, so that's why I'm using it in the 6th century. Ayatollah Sheikh Hadi Yusuf al-Gharawi, he in his Waqa'at al-Taf, it's there as I mentioned in English, he says no, we don't know when did this book come up. So he says it's very obvious that this is not the work of Abu Mikhnaf. Okay, he gives reason as to why he believes this is not the work of Abu Mikhnaf, the original one. He says However, it is not known where and when exactly was it compiled. So we don't know when did this book come up. When was it put together and when was it compiled? Nor even do we know when was it first published. Okay? So can you see this now? When was it compiled? He says we don't know. And when was it published also? We don't know. So I'm bringing it under 6th century because some of the scholars have mentioned that this book appeared in the 6th century. Okay? Now notice the narrative changes altogether. Imam is alone. ثم أقبل إلى أم كلثوم. And you see, the earlier narratives was he went to the tents and he told the ladies, give me this child. Here now he turns towards Kulthum. Now from here onwards, you will notice Kulthum's role is becoming very visible. In some places, if you feel that some people felt that she was the mother of this young child. Imam turns back to her and says, Ya ukhta usika biwaladi al-asghar. Notice there's no word Ali Asghar. I'm entrusting you, I'm giving you, and I'm entrusting you this baby, Asghar. Okay? This younger baby, I'm giving it to you and I'm entrusting it to you. Now, did the word Ali Asghar come from here? Is something which we need to now work upon. Yeah? So, I'm entrusting you this younger baby. So she turns back to say that وَلَهُ الْعُمْرِ سِتَّةَ أَشْهُرٍ. This is the first time we see this. وَلَهُ الْعُمْرِ سِتَّةُ أَشْهُرٍ. This is the first time we're seeing this now. That 6 months is being mentioned now. And unfortunately, this has become the common narrative in the pulpits today. It's again from a forged narrative of Abu Mikhnaf. Unfortunately, this is where we need to cry, for what's happening. So this child is 6 months old. This is the first time we're seeing this narrative. And then she turns back to the brother and says that this son and this child, it's 3 days. Now we are seeing this for the first time also. That it's 3 days this child has not had water. Go and have water. Go and ask water for him. Okay? So Imam takes the son and takes this child and he goes towards the community and towards the enemy. Again, we don't see this in the earlier narratives that Imam is going towards the enemy and talking to them. From now on, we will see this becomes the common narrative. Yeah. So Imam goes back to them and tells them, Ya qawm, قد قتلتم أخي وأولادي وأنصاري وما بقي غير هذا الطفل وهو يتلظى عطشا. Okay, all these words are not seen earlier. That, O community, he's talking to the enemies. He's telling them, you've killed everybody from my family and from my companions. Okay, there's nobody remaining except this child. وَهُوَ يَتَلَظَّى عَطَشًا. Now this is a new description being given, which you don't see earlier. Okay, يَتَلَظَّى meaning, that the description is a description of a fish. Okay, when the fish comes out of the water, when it starts shaking and trembling, okay, that's the description of taladha. Okay, so yataladha atasha, he's trembling and moving with thirst. He's not stable anymore. He's just trembling with thirst. So can you give him water? So in the moment when he was talking to them, a wicked and a ruthless enemy hits these are the words being used. Yeah, إذا أتاه سهم مشوم من ظالم غشوم. Okay, now these seems very wordings which are put by the author himself. Okay, and a ruthless and a wicked oppressor through the arrow. Now this is a statement also we don't see it earlier. فذبح الطفل من الأذن إلى الأذن. Okay, and this has become again the common narrative within the pulpits that the child was slaughtered from the ear to the ear. So as if the arrow came from one ear and came out from the other ear. This fake and this forged version says that إن السهم رماه قديمة الآمري. So notice in the earlier versions we have Hurmala and other names. He says it was not Hurmala who hit this young baby, it was Qadima al-Amiri. He was the one who hit the arrow towards this child. And then the whole discussion of Imam taking the blood in his hand and throwing towards the sky. Now the dua now, okay? The dua also changes now. Allahumma inni ushhiduka ala ha'ula'i al-qawm. Oh Allah, be the witness that these people have intended to destroy and kill us all from the family of Ali Muhammad, okay? They want to kill us all. Now this is something we don't see it earlier also. ثم رجع بالطفل مذبوحا. Again, he then goes back with the child towards the tent. He is slaughtered, okay? ودمه يجري على صدره. Something we don't see again earlier, that his blood was flowing on his chest. So Imam is holding the child and the blood is flowing on his chest. In the earlier narratives we saw Imam throwing the blood. Here now the blood is flowing on his chest. And فَأَلْقَاهُ إِلَى أُمِّ كُلْثُومٍ فَوَضَعَهُ فِي الْخَيْمَةِ. Okay? Then he gave the child to Kulthum, which we don't see again earlier, and the child was put in the tent. Okay, this is the forged Abu Mikhnaf. This is 6th century. The end of the 6th century now, 588 Hijrah, we have a scholar by the name of Ibn Shahr Ashub in his Manaqib. He now comes for the first time, uses the word Ali Asghar now. Okay, and it seems like he is taken from this forged version, or maybe he's influenced by that, and he comes and uses this word. Okay, فبقي الحسين وحيدا وفي حجره علي الأصغر. Okay, this child was there in the lap of Imam Husayn alayhi salam. The other remaining things are the same in his narrative. The end of the 6th century, 596 Hijrah, you have the translation of the book Al-Futuh of Ibn A'tham, which was 314 Hijrah, which we quoted it. Now the reason I'm repeating it is because this is a translation of Al-Futuh in Persian, written by somebody called Mustawfi Harawi. And the reason I'm quoting it, because he ends up adding some things which were not there in the earlier narrative. Okay? And that's why I am bringing this again. And this is where I have kept on repeating that the historians took a lot of they took it in their hands to add things the way they want, edit the way they want, subtract the way they want. Okay, this is how historians wrote history. Okay, and this is the question we have been asking from day one, that are we reading the history or are we reading the narrative of the author? So he then says, he quotes the first portion as the way Ibn A'tham had mentioned in his Arabic version, and then he adds another version which was not there in the Ibn A'tham's version altogether, and then he calls it the translation of Ibn A'tham's Al-Futuh. So now Imam is taking the child towards the tent. Okay, as Tishnagi is Tirab Minamud, this is something we saw, that he was trembling with thirst. Now, this is something we don't see, that Imam, when he was taking the child towards the battlefield, okay, when he was asking for water, he puts him on the saddle. Okay, he puts him before the saddle. Now, this is something, a small detail, which we don't see it earlier. Now, for the first time now, we see this narrative coming up. You notice in the forged version of Abu Mikhnaf, Imam said different wordings to the people of Ibn Ziyad. Here we see different wordings coming up. And this has become a common narrative again in the pulpits. He turns back to them and says that, "Oh people, if in your view I am sinful, then this child has committed no sin. Okay, give him water." So they, instead of giving water, they throw the arrow. Now the arrow was hit. He adds another narrative. In Abu Mikhnaf, the forged version, we saw that the arrow hit the ear and it came out from the other ear. Here now they say that they hit one side of the throat and it came out from the hand of Imam alayhi salam. So as if Imam is holding the child and the child is hit on his neck and the arrow comes out and comes out from the neck, from the hand of Imam alayhi salam. Okay, and then he brings this child to the tent again and he brings him to his mother. Again, we're seeing for the first time the role of the mother coming up now. He brings him to his mother and he tells the mother that, "Take your son because he has been quenched from the pool of and from the pond of Kawthar." All these narratives which we don't see earlier. Come to 654 Hijrah now. This is mid 7th century. Sibt al-Jawzi, Ibn Jawzi in his Tadhkirat al-Khawas, he adds one more statement. Now, can you see in this 1-2 centuries we have 3-4 different statements coming out from the narratives. Okay, same Imam went to the battlefield and is speaking to the enemies, but 4 different narratives are coming out. So Ibn Jawzi says when Imam started speaking to the enemies, asking for water, he says, "Ya qawm, in lam tarhamuni farhamu hadha tafl." Okay, if you don't want to have mercy on me, have mercy on this child. Okay, and that is where they hit the child with an arrow, and Imam does the dua. When Imam does the dua, this dua is again there in the earlier narratives. There's a voice which comes out from the hidden realms. Again, we don't have this narrative in the earlier versions. Okay, فَنُودِيَ مِنَ الْهَوَىٰ. So as if a voice comes out from the sky that, دَعْهُ يَا Husayn, leave him, O Husayn. Why? Because we have prepared for him to be quenched in Jannah. So can you see the supernatural narrative now coming up? As we go further, we'll see these supernatural narratives coming up. Okay, this is something we had not seen earlier. This was Ibn Jawzi. 10 years later, you have Ibn Tawus in 664, Sayyid Ibn Tawus in 664 Hijrah in his Luhuf. Now, his narrative is almost the same. The only thing he does is that instead of Imam telling the ladies, "Give me the child," or Imam telling Kulthum, the way we saw in the forged Abu Mikhnaf, he says, "Qala li Zainab." Okay, he turned back to Bibi Zainab and told her that, "Give me this child so that I can bid farewell to this child." Okay, so now the role of Bibi Zainab is now coming in. Okay, so this was 7th century. We have the same narrative in this period till the early 10th century. This is where now we see a different narrative altogether coming up. We come with Rawdat al-Shuhada of Mullah Kashifi in 910 Hijrah. Okay, earlier 10th century. I'm sorry. So, what Mullah Kashifi's version is this. He says that this martyrdom of this young son happened after the martyrdom of Ali Akbar. Okay, number one. And number two, the name of the mother he is using is the name of Shahrabanu, which we don't see it in the earlier narrative. Now, this is an area of research which researchers would want to discuss. That is he using purposely this name Shahrbanu. Shahrbanu is an Iranian name. Okay, Shahrbanu was from Iran, and Mullah Kashifi is writing this narrative and this maqtal for the Iranian audience. Okay, now is he trying to impress the Iranian audience? Is he trying to arouse the emotions of the Iranian audience by using Iranian names, or what? This is an area of research which is required. Okay, now Imam is all alone. There's no help from anywhere. When seeing the ladies see this, they start crying also. They start weeping on the state of the Imam. So Imam turns back to them and tells them that be silent, okay? Be patient, don't cry, okay? Because the enemy will overcome you if you start crying. And then he uses a word. This is a discussion by itself. که در بلا جزع کردن موجب محرومیت ثواب است. Okay, Imam is telling the ladies that don't weep, be silent, because in the state of difficulties doing jaza, the word used is jaza, brings deprivation from the reward which Allah wants to give you. Okay, so in the state of bala and in the state of difficulties, you should never do jaza. That is what Kashif's version is saying. Why? Because that would not earn you the reward which Allah would give you in becoming patient when you lose somebody. Now, I'm just mentioning an area of research. This statement is found in a lot of maqatil. Even if you go to Sheikh Mufid's Irshad, you will see this in another area. When Imam is leaving and bidding farewell to the ladies, he tells the ladies, don't do jaza. Okay, now this has become a discussion that jaza is not crying, but buka is crying. Okay, so baka yabki is to cry, but we're not saying to cry, we're saying to do jaza. So normal crying is allowed. Okay, there's no problem with that. The issue and the discussion is on jaza. Jaza means you are crying restlessly, okay? You lose yourself at times the way it happens. You know, you sometimes end up doing things which are not normal. Okay, so you will open up your shirt, or you'll become impatient at times, or you will become restless at times, or even end up doing things. So for example, the discussion of jaza comes under zanjir and all these rituals which are there. They all come under this discussion. Is it allowed to do jaza or not? Okay, so for others, the scholars are all unanimous that you're not allowed to do jaza for for all the other infallibles and other personalities, except Imam Husayn alayhi salam. Now this is where the discussion comes up. Okay, now if you take this narrative, then Mullah Kashif's narrative is saying that no, you should not be doing jaza. Okay, you are not allowed to cry restlessly and impatiently and do things which are out of the norm. Okay, so this is just an area of research which I'm pointing out for those who are interested in further research. Okay, now then so Imam then turns to when he tells them don't cry, don't do jaza and all whatnot, then he hugs his daughter Sukaina or Sakina. Again, we don't see this earlier. Okay, this is the first time we're seeing this. He's hugging his daughter, and then he turns to his sisters and tells them that my Sukaina will be orphaned today. Okay, so my Sukaina will be orphaned today, so please take care of him. Don't, do not treat her with disregard and all whatnot. Okay, because she is an orphan. And then Imam then turns back again and says that do not bare your hair, do not strike your faces, do not scratch your chests. Okay, these are all the forms of jaza. Okay, Imam is telling them, don't do this once I'm gone, because these are the customs of the Jahiliyyah period. Okay, In the Jahiliyyah period, this was how they used to do. I would not want you to do the same, but I don't stop you from crying. Okay? آنها عادت اهل جاهلیت است اما از گریه من نمیکنم. So I'm not stopping you from crying. Crying is a normal thing. But doing things which are of Jahiliyyah practices, don't do that. Okay? Now, Imam is telling the ladies, and the ladies immediately they start crying. Okay? Now, at this juncture, you will see Lady Zainab, Kulthum, Shahrbanu. This is the first time this name is coming up. And Sukaina, they lose their strength and they start weeping. Now, the weeping goes to the level that the crying is heard even in the heavens, and they also start crying. They are affected by the crying also. As I said, you see the supernatural narrative now coming in, okay? So while these ladies are crying, they're affecting the heavens and the sky, and they also start crying, and they're affected by the cries of the ladies. So Imam calms them down, and then he wants now to go to the battlefield. In the process of moving towards the battlefield, then a voice comes out, a cry comes out from the tent. So Imam then turns out to ask, what's the cause of this? Why? What is happening? And this is the place now he's told that Ali Asghar Astishnagi Zarimi Kunat. Okay? This child is crying. Why? Because the mother's chest has dried down. Okay? The mother doesn't have milk anymore. And this child is almost on the verge of the death. Okay? And this is where the Imam then says that, okay, give me, and then Imam takes him to the battlefield, and then he speaks to the people. Now, he speaks the same thing, okay, that if I am guilty, at least this child is not guilty, and this is the same statement. But then he adds up one more statement again, which we don't see it earlier. Can you see in this 3-4 centuries we have 4-5 different narratives coming up? He says, give him water. Why? Because the mother's milk has dried down because of the thirst, because the mother has not had water, and that is why the mother's milk has dried down and cannot feed this child. Okay? Now, and then again the arrow is hit then, and then the whole narrative is the same, and then the Imam takes the child towards the mother and tells the mother that he has been quenched from the pool of Kawthar. At this time, it's Shahrbanu who starts crying out. And you see now, the mother's name is Shahrbanu, and then the other ladies also cry also together. Okay, this is Mullah Kashifi in his Rawdatul Shuhada. Come to 1080 Hijrah, Turayhi in his Muntakhab now. He narrates that this whole incident of this young child happened after Abbas was martyred. You remember when we discussed Ali Akbar also, we discussed this, so I don't want to repeat it. He says when Abbas was martyred, Imam gives out that cry. Ali Akbar then comes out to help the Imam. He goes to fetch water, and then he brings water for the child. Okay? And he says, if there is any water remaining, then I would love to take that water also. Now, after that, Imam is now going to give the child the water. So there is water which has reached the tents already. Okay? This is on the 10th day of Ashura, water has reached the tents. When Imam goes to give the child the water, he takes the water skin towards the young boy. Atahu sahmun masmoom. This is something also we don't see this. That the arrow came and pierced the child, but the arrow was poisonous. This is for the first time we see this, that the arrow was poisonous. Okay? فوقع في حلق الطفل. Okay, this is then the same thing then, okay? The narrative then is the same. So Imam basically didn't take the water and give it to others or drink from it. He threw the water skin altogether. Okay, this is one thing Turayhi mentions. A second thing which Turayhi mentions, it's on the night of 11th, it was the Sham Ghariba. The reason I'm mentioning is this because it's related to the young son, who he calls Al Yasghar. It's Sakina or Sukaina when she goes towards the battlefield when everybody is martyred. She goes. This is at the end of 11th century. Can you see? These are all narratives which have become the common narratives in our pulpits. They're all later narratives which come in. Okay, he says that Sukaina, when she drops herself on the body of the father, then she sees the father in the dream. And then the father talks to her and tells her that, how did I ask for water? So this famous statement that Shi'ati ma'in sharibtum ma'adhbin fadhkuruni comes in the 11th century. That, oh my Shias, if you're drinking water, then remember me when you drink water. This is something which comes in the 11th century. Now, the reason I mention this is that Imam then tells Sukaina or Sukaina that كيف أستسقي لطفلي فأبوا أن يرحموني. Okay, I was asking for water for this child, but they refused to give me water for this child. Okay, this comes in Turayh's Muntakhab. This is 11th Hijrah. Now, come to, so Bihar, Allama Majlis's narrative has nothing more. Come to now early 13th century, 12 or 9 Hijrah. Muhaqqiq al-Naraqi, the author of Jami al-Sadat, which is translated, the abridged version is translated in English. It's the Akhlaq book which we used to refer to a lot before. Now there are a lot of books in English, but initially we didn't have books in English on Akhlaq. Yeah, so we have Mi'raj al-Sa'ada and Jami al-Sadat. Okay, so this is from Muhaqqiq Naraqi. In his Muhriq al-Qulub, he says that when this child passes away, is martyred, when the arrow hits the child, ثم تبسم واستشهد. Okay, this is something we don't see again earlier, that this child, while he was passing away, he was in a state of smiling, and then he gets martyred. Okay, this is something again which we don't see earlier. Come to 1285 Hijrah, Behbahani in his Dam'atus Sakiba. He says, وفي بعض الكتب, and this is where I have been mentioning, this is the problem with these later books. A lot of them come and don't even give you references of what are the sources and what are the references of what they're bringing. Okay, they will just tell you in some of the books it's written. Which books, we don't know. Where did you get these books from? We don't know. What's the sanad of these books? We don't know. Okay, he just tells you it's found in some books. Now, it was in the earlier Abu Mikhnaf's version, it was Kulthum who brings the child to Imam Husayn alayhi salam, okay, and says that this child has not had water for 3 days. Here he says, Inna Zainab ukhtahu, okay. It's his sister Zainab, not Kulthum as we saw earlier. It's Zainab who came and brought the child to Imam Husayn alayhi salam and says that 3 days this child has not had water. And then Imam takes the child towards the enemies and says now, okay, and tells them feed them and give him water. Again, a statement now is added. وَيْلَكُمْ أُسْقُوا هَذَا الرَّضِيعَ أَمَا تَرَوْنَهُ يَتَلَظَّى عَطَشًا مِنْ غَيْرِ ذَنْبٍ أَتَاهُ إِلَيْكُمْ. Can't you see, woe be on you, punishment be on you, the people of Ibn Ziyad. Can't you see this infant, this nursing baby is trembling out of thirst? That means he has not had water for 3 days. Can you give him water? And he has no punishment. He has not done anything wrong to you. Okay? This is something, again, we don't see in the earlier narratives. Now, then he goes on again. Imam then puts when the child is martyred, the blood comes in the hands. Then Imam talks to himself. This is something, again, which we don't see it in the earlier narrative. وَقَالَ يَا نَفْسِي اصْبِرِي وَاحْتَسِبِي فِي مَا أَصَابَكَ. Okay? Oh my soul, be patient, okay, and seek the reward of Allah from what has befallen you. So be patient. Imam is talking to himself. This is something, again, which we don't see in the earlier narrative. Come to 1286, Mullah Fadil Darbandi in his Asrar al-Shahada. This is end of 13th century now. He now says that Imam makes the istighatha, he makes out the call for help. Is there anybody to help us? When this Imam makes this cry for help, the son now hears out. This is the first time we are hearing this. And this also, unfortunately, has become the common narrative within the pulpits. لما سمع استغاثة أبيه عليه السلام, when he heard that Imam crying for help, قطع القماط, okay, he cut off his cradle, if you want to put it that way, or the cloth which he was tied in, he cut it off and he tear it off, and then وَأَلْقَى نَفْسَهُ, he dropped himself down, وَبَكَى وَضَجَّ, okay, he started crying and weeping, as if showing to his father that, oh, you called out for help, I am ready. If there's nobody for help, I am ready to help you. Okay, this is one narrative Mullah Fadil adds. Another narrative which Mullah Fadil Darbandi adds is from Humayd bin Muslim. He says that Humayd narrates that when he says, I saw a child who was martyred in the hand of Imam Husayn alayhi salam. Once he was martyred, a lady came out of the tents. Okay, she was so radiant in her face. This is exactly what he says. Okay, تَقَعُ تَارَةً وَتَقُومُ أُخْرَى. She was falling down and she was standing up. She was falling down and standing up as going towards the baby. Okay, so she was not stable. She was falling down and stumbling as she was going through. وَهِيَ تُنَادِي يَا وَلَدَا وَقَتِيلَا وَمُحْجَةَ قَلْبَا. Okay, oh my child, oh child, oh the one who has been martyred, okay, who has been slain. Okay, this cry of this lady is such that the people from the Banu Umayyah, from Ibn Ziyad's tent, they also started crying. Okay, this is the same words, fabakat. Okay, the other people from the other side, they started crying. Until she came at the body of this child. And she threw herself and she started crying for a long period. And this is where then Imam comes to her. So when she starts crying, then other ladies also join her. Okay, then Imam sees this situation, and then Imam goes and covers them and somehow takes back the ladies to the tent again. So Humayd says that I then turned back and said, who are these ladies? Who is she? Okay, so they said that it was Kulthum. Can you see the role of Kulthum now? And the other ladies were Fatima Sughra. This is the first time we're seeing this name. Sukayna, Ruqayya, the first time we're seeing this name, and Zainab. Okay, these were the other ladies who came and dropped themselves also on the body of this infant. And the third narrative which Mullah Fadil Darbandi adds is when Imam alayhi salam is coming towards the tent. Now the child has been martyred, Imam has the blood with him. He adds one more thing. He says, وَهُوَ مُخَذَّبٌ بِدِمَائِهِ. Okay, so in the earlier narratives we saw that Imam dropping the blood on the earth towards the sky, on the grave, okay, wrapping up the child with the blood. These were narratives which we saw earlier. Now we are seeing the narrative that Imam took the blood and put it on his face. Okay, so he was mukhadab, khidab, okay, the way we say in Urdu, khizab, he had done khizab of the blood with his face. Okay, this is Mullah Darbandi. Then he brought the child, towards the tent. The lady started weeping. فأخذت أم كلثوم الطفل. Notice there is no mother mentioned. Kulthum takes the child وضمته إلى صدرها, and she hugs and puts the child on her chest. وجعلت نهره عند نهرها. Okay, she puts the neck of the baby towards the neck of the child, and she starts crying. ثم نادت. She starts calling out loudly. Okay, when she's crying and she's wailing and she's crying out loudly. Wa Muhammada wa Aliya, and all these statements come out of crying, which we don't see in the earlier narratives. Okay, come in 1314 Hijr, where we have a person by the name of Mullah Muhammad Baqir al-Fisharaki in his book Unwan al-Kalam. Okay, he adds two more things to the narrative. Again, I'm not repeating the narratives, only what is specific to these narratives and which are added in this period. That's what I am talking about. Okay, so Imam brings this child towards the tents. The mother sees, the mother of this child sees Imam bringing something. She doesn't believe, she could not believe that the child was hit. Okay, and the child was martyred. She thought that Imam, the blood on Imam was the blood of Imam himself, not of the child. Unless after a while, when she opens, then she realizes that, oh, it's the child who has been slaughtered and martyred. This is one thing he adds. Another narrative which he adds, which again has become again a common narrative, which again, this is where it comes in the early 14th century, is the child's, the grave of the child. So in the earlier narratives, we saw that Imam either took the child towards the tent or dug the grave and and buried the child. Here now, for the first time, we're seeing that Imam's, the body of the child is being brought out and then put on the spear. This is something which we don't see in the earlier narratives. Okay? Come to 1358 Hijrah, you have a person by the name of Mahdi Ha'ir Mazandarani in his Ma'al al-Sibtain. He adds one more thing. He says that when Imam alayhi salam brings, now notice the way they put it, yeah, وَفِي خَبَرٌ وَفِي خَبَرٍ. Okay, the way they put it, that in a riwayah it has come. Which riwayah, where, we don't know. Okay, this is the problem with the later books. Now, a person ends up trusting these later books, it's another issue. And unfortunately, this is what's happening, yeah? We're trusting the later books more than the earlier books. When Imam was bringing this son towards the khayma and the tent, Sakina or Sukaina turns back to Imam and says, Ya Abata, لعلك سقيت أخي الماء. Okay, you have probably given water to my brother. Okay, and then the Imam turns back and says, no, your brother has been martyred and has been slaughtered by an arrow. Okay, this is again, we don't see that earlier. Come in 1345 Hijrah. Okay, so it's somewhere here. 1345 Hijrah. There's a person by the name of Hussein Ha'ir Shirazi in Dhakiratul Darain. Okay, he says that when this child was being martyred and was being slaughtered, Rubab now. Okay, you see the word Rubab now coming up now. Okay, Rubab, the mother, was standing at the tent and looking at the child being slaughtered. Okay, come in 1370, Absar al-Ain fi Ansar al-Hussein by Samawi Muhammad. He comes and says, now in the same period, one narrative we saw that the body was taken out of the grave. He comes and says that all the martyrs' bodies were taken out, and the heads were put on the spears, except two people, two martyrs whose heads were not put on the spear. That means he is supporting the narrative that the digging of the grave didn't happen. Okay, so one of them is this child. He was not, the body was not taken out, and the head was not put on the spear. Okay, now come 1417 Hijrah, so it is very recent now with us. Okay, in our period, 15th century, you have a khatib, you have a speaker by the name of Abdul Wahab al-Kashi or Kashi, in his Masra al-Husayn. Now this is again a narrative which has become so famous and so popular. Notice where does it come? Okay, it's so recent, but this is something which keeps on getting recited. He says that there was some kind of difference which happened. So when Imam went to feed for asking for water, okay, and then suddenly an ikhtilaf and a difference happened within the army of Umar ibn Sa'ad and Ibn Ziyad, that what should we do when they saw that child? Okay, this is the popular narrative which we hear, that somehow there was a difference of opinion going on within the army of the enemies. And this is where then Ibn Sa'ad turns back to Hurmala and tells him iqta'. So here it's iqta' an-niza', okay, finish this differences, finish this ikhtilaf and these arguments. Now we hear iqta' kalam al-Husayn. I have not seen that. I saw this in a book called Mawsu'a Imam Husayn alayhi salam by Habib Labib Baydoun. Yes, I saw that, but he doesn't give a reference for where he takes that statement from. So iqta' kalam al-Husayn, I have not seen that. Where does it come from? But iqta' an-niza' is coming now in the early 15th century, that finish this argument and hit this child now. Okay, and then again in the 15th century, in 1427, again in the same period which we are living in, there's a scholar by the name of Muhammad Ijtihardi, Sheikh Muhammad Ijtihardi, in his Sogname Ali Muhammad. He is the first one, at least as per my knowledge, unless there's another one before this. He's the first one now who claims that the arrow which was hit towards this child was a three-edged arrow. Okay, we hear this, yeah, that the arrow was three-edged arrow. Something which now comes in the 15th century, that a three-edged arrow was hit towards three people. Okay, he mentions. So this is a discussion he mentions between Mukhtar and Hurmala. When Hurmala says, now that you have decided to kill me, he tells Mukhtar, now that you have decided to kill me, let me tell you what I did on the day of Ashura. So one of those things, he says that I had a three-edged arrow and I hit it. It was filled with poison also. One of the targets I hit was this child. Okay, he mentions two other targets and two other hits which he hit, but one of those targets was this young child. Okay, can you see where and how this whole narrative is evolving with a lot of time? A lot of additions are being added, a lot of things are being edited also. Okay, so in conclusion, I've been trying to go very quickly. I'm not putting up a lot of details everywhere. I'm just trying to pick up on the differences in each period and in each era, so that you can see how this narratives are evolving. Okay, and with time you see how the narratives are becoming more imaginative and more, the way they say, it's more takhayyul now. Okay, rather than being more historical. Okay, let's pray to Allah. Allah should give us the tawfiq again to see the reality the way it is, to be able to understand the realities of Islam the way it is. And Allah should help the madhlumeen and all the oppressed throughout the world, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.